Hey Aptera fans, welcome. Today we're here to talk about our production tooling, our recent trip to Italy, and all the things we're doing to push towards production. I think we've been amazingly busy over the last few months.
Living out of a suitcase.
Traveling around to try to get production funding in the door, but also marveling at a lot of the engineers' progress as we push to production.
Yeah, it's great to see firsthand how the accelerator efforts are really coming through all across the globe. We've got things happening here in California and Italy and all over that are really pushed forward by the accelerator efforts, so we really appreciate that.
With that additional funding and some of the other things that we're working on, like the CEC grant that is now actually funding for the first time.
Yeah, we got our first payment from the CEC.
We would like to just take everyone through how we're starting to invest that funding and how we're going to push forward in the future to get more funding and get into production here as soon as possible. I know everyone wants their Apteras as soon as possible. We good to start the presentation?
I think so.
Yeah. Clicking but no clicking. There we go. As a general overview, we have over 42,000 pre-orders now. I just looked this morning. Every day they go up.
Yeah.
42,862, something like that. Just like the accelerator program, every day you look and more people are joining the Aptera family and embarking on this mission towards solar mobility with us. We've raised a considerable amount of money from over 16,000 investors now. So thank you to everyone who has contributed to the cause. And those people that have skin in the game are now hopefully out telling the Aptera story and inspiring more people to make reservations and invest in Aptera and all the things that will help push us to production. And we've started working on the CEC grant, $22 million, which has already started to match funding for some of the equipment that you see behind us here. And it will help pay for some of the solar and battery production equipment that we'll have here in this facility very soon. We're humbled by the CEC's acceptance of that grant, and we're going to put that money to really good use here.
Yeah, the good news on that is that a lot of those costs that we've been able to accrue already before we awarded the grant are now just being paid out by the CEC. So we're getting paid back for some stuff that we've spent months ago.
Yeah, it's great, and the team, Pablo's team, and the solar and battery team have a lot of amazing work done on how to produce those things at volume, and that equipment will be coming in soon, and we'll be able to see it churn through, just like we're seeing the equipment in Italy start to churn through. We really have a focus here at Aptera of having the least environmental impact in our production. And we hear clanking on the roof every day, and we're installing solar on this building that we're at here in Carlsbad, and it will be great to have our facility here solar powered, along with the production facility that just uses a lot less to get the vehicle into manufacture and doesn't have a paint shop, which we give tours here all the time, and we take investors around and kind of show them the facility. And one of the big differences in this production facility than any other kind of automotive plant is traditional automotive, you see big rolled steel stamped into parts, then dipped into a tank or sprayed with paint. We kind of get rid of all that with CPC in Italy by doing carbon fiber SMC parts. We'll receive basically the body structures here, and that will start the assembly life of the Aptera, but we don't need to paint it because we're going to be using vinyl wrap. So a typical automotive plant can spend 40 to 50% of their CapEx just on the paint shop. And 80% of the environmental emissions from that facility can come just from the paint shop. So we eliminated paint. So we don't atomize any solvents, it doesn't go into the air, just a much more environmentally manufacturing production facility.
It's not apparent to me that the company installing the solar was being very gentle when they were putting the panels on the roof, but it sounded like they were dropping them from a helicopter. But one of the things that goes to make this plant and this example of a plant scalable anywhere in the world is the fact that there's virtually no capital improvement required on the building. So this is an 80,000 square foot building here in Carlsbad. It could be located in any state or in any country with virtually no work necessary for the building. In fact, I don't know if you can see on the camera, probably not, but the blue tape line around the floor is the line that the robots will follow to bring the vehicle to different stages of assembly. That's about the largest requirement that's needed for the building, besides some power upgrades or bringing power out to the line. So it's a pretty simple way of expanding the factory without massive amounts of capital compared to traditional automotive assembly.
And what that means is we can duplicate this facility all around the world. So San Diego, San Francisco, Houston, Georgia, Virginia, Australia, UK, the Netherlands. You know, you can find a 100,000 square foot building, 10,000 square meter building anywhere in the world very quickly. So when we start to branch out and really build our capacity, we can take this plant and we can duplicate it anywhere in the world very, very quickly. And we're having those conversations all around the world. We've had amazing progress by the team in our IP and patent portfolio. We have 60 invention disclosures and 27 patents pending, with 2 awarded. You know, mostly in our solar, but also in our battery body and electronics. So great progress by the team, and just putting down what they've done on paper and letting the lawyers chase it on the patent side.
Also making sure we have freedom to operate too with lots of these other technologies.
And we talked about our amazing fundraising progress. It's a continuing process. We're kind of deploying a lot of different mechanisms to get this vehicle into production. More equity investment outside of the crowdfunding, possibly debt financing of equipment, grants like the CEC grant, but possibly other grants, and you know, big loan programs that are made just to facilitate great technologies, you know, to stimulate growth in America or in different states.
On that note, our viewers should know that last week we actually filed our Department of Energy loan application. So that's been months, I mean, almost years in the works, hundreds of pages. And I think within several weeks, we'll find out if we have a conditionally complete, or substantially complete, I think is a word. And once that happens, and we'll be able to start accruing costs for payback in the loan. So that's a big milestone for the company. Not only filing it, but when we get the hopefully conditionally or substantially complete.
Yeah, a lot of work by the team on that. We'll talk about that in another slide.
Thanks, Dwayne.
But, yeah, thanks, Dwayne. But our Bink manufacturing with CPC, we both just got back from Italy.
Yeah,
you indulged in a lot more wine and cured meats than I did.
No, come on. That was I mean, it is Italy, and I do like Lambrusco. You know, the thing about the Aptera body that's really transformative from a cost perspective is we don't have to have the tools to jig and fixture 200 parts to weld together. We've got about 6 parts that are critical in the alignment and the body structure. So dealing with 6 parts is so fundamentally different than dealing with 200 parts, from the storage, the dunnage, the fixturing and jigs. And so that means if we design, let's say, the next vehicle even with the same strategy and ethos, we'll need a fraction of the capital costs it would take to bring a typical car into production. So that's why our capital needs, and Chris just said we've done so much for the 90 million or so we've raised, and the reason we've been able to do so much for the 90 million that we've raised is because this vehicle, the way it's designed from the ground up, just requires fundamentally less capital to build and to assemble.
Yeah, to go there and see the tooling actually started on these body structures is just amazing. They're the longest lead item for us to get to production. So to have started investing in those gigantic, they're huge tools. You know, we started investing in those last year.
Right.
So to really see that they've progressed, and now some of them are shiny and bright and almost ready for production is really, really cool.
In fact, these tools, they started their life in Germany. Last year sometime. And each one of these blocks you're looking at, some of them are up to 10 tons each, so massive amounts of steel. They take a long time to make, which is why we had to start the process almost a year ago just to make the steel. Now the steel's been in Italy some time. It's been going through various stages of cutting and preparation. And now the slides that we're about to show you are dies that many of them have gone through the final stage of polishing and tuning. The very next stage, they actually go through commissioning where they put the die in another block, They outfit it with temperature sensors to make sure that the heat is very even. Now, why is that important? You know, when Chris and I first started the company, the only thing we knew about composites was resin fusion and using glass fiber, carbon fiber, and stretching out the fiber in a way that works great for boats, but it's very difficult to scale from an automotive perspective.
I don't know about great. It worked. It made very compelling boats, but the problem that we saw was it just takes a lot of labor. A person has to physically lay the cloth
Right.
into the mold. A person has to physically bag that part. And then resin infusion, the cycle time, you had to leave the part under bag for like 4 hours after you infused the part. So the resin would flow through the part and you have to wait for it to cure. That's just untenable if you want to make 20 to 150,000 vehicles a year, because you'd have to have so many molds sitting around for 4-hour cure times that it would just, you wouldn't be able to manage that many parts.
And even with our new UV cure stuff, we can still pull a traditional part in 10 minutes, but there's a lot of labor involved.
Yeah.
The way this is fundamentally different is the carbon fiber and the plastics they look like Play-Doh, and they're pre-measured and they go into the mold and it squeezes it shut and heats it up. And the evenness of that heating is very important. And so that's part of what they're ensuring here with the holes that you see drilled in here and also the application of the sensors. But the advantage is that it closes and a few minutes later a part comes out that requires virtually no hand work. It's basically you deflash the edge, maybe a couple of grams of waste, that's it, and it's ready to use.
Yeah, really cool aspect of CPC's part production that I noticed was that there's just no waste. Like the parts come out almost clean. You think of like an injection molded plastic part. It's injection molded, you pull out the part, you break off a little tab, and that's it, it's useful. That's essentially what you end up with these large format carbon fiber parts. They come out, there's a little flashing on them, but they have less than 1% of waste in material. And that material that they do waste actually gets recycled back into future production parts. So these parts are recyclable up to 5 times, which is amazing. That means that not only the waste from the production process can be recycled, but also in service, after its useful life, the vehicle's body can be recycled up to 5 times, which is really cool.
And I think when our team here was validating the different polymer wraps for the body panels, they didn't have to do any surface preparation other than just wipe it with alcohol, I think. So that was
they put in a release agent before the part's stamped, and we thought, oh, that release agent would probably still be on the part. But no, we started testing wraps here, and they've been outside, you know, getting sun exposure for months and months, and we found that we don't have to do kind of any surface prep. The parts come out of the molds, and you're able to just put a wrap on them, and it's good to go. I do think it's cool to note that these steel blocks on the left-hand side of your presentation are actually the blocks for the rear wheel skirt and the front wheel covers.
They haven't been machined
the wheel
yet.
pants.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't been machined yet, but this is how they come to the machining shop. So the holes in the side are actually for the heating of the mold, and those are pre-drilled before they start milling the mold.
That's a different shop that does that, and they explain to us, you know, how do you drill a hole that's in some cases 10 foot, you know, in length, or however many meters that is, and keep it straight. So it's a lot of precision and craftsmanship that goes on to make these parts.
Yeah, it's quite a process. Ooh, baby.
The hood inner. Just look, I'm in the same uniform there as I am here. So yeah, this is an unpolished hood inner die. So you can see it's gone through the first step. The second step, it'll go into another machine with a different bit. It'll get fairly polished by the machine, and then there's a final step of hand polishing. I think there's a picture of that in some of the next one. But you can see the crane in the background and the eyelets there. I mean, when they move these things around, these are, like I said, several tons each. So just getting them in and out of the CNC machine is a big deal. It requires a lot of specialization to do it. Interesting note, almost a lot of the factories we saw in Italy have not only glass sides, whereas we have this concrete here, but they also have the serrated roof with the glass roof. And so all the lighting you see in here is natural lighting. There's no artificial lights. It's very cool.
Yeah, this rough cut is just beautiful because you get all the reflection off the rough cut. But there's you know, different types of machines that they use for this tooling, and the rough cut machine is just more powerful. Just plows through a lot of material really quickly. And then you have kind of a finer machine that does finer cuts, which really polishes up the mold. And then in some cases they actually polish it by hand in some places.
Now every part needs 2 sides, right? There's the male and the female of the die, not really a mold but a die. So there's up to 10,000 tons of force being applied to, let's say, the body sides. I think less on these, But the part you're looking at now is the carbon door hinge or door latch pocket. There's a pocket that's bonded onto the body, and that's where the hinge goes, or not the hinge, excuse me, the latch. And so that's part of that structure that you're seeing. And that's a left and a right together in one mold. And you'll see that in some of the other body pieces. There's a main body part, and then there's maybe 2 or 3 other parts that are also captured in the same die, just so we minimize the number of dies that we need.
We apologize for the audio. Apparently San Diego is having torrential rainstorms right now. The audio was really pleasant in the beginning, and now we're getting rained on. Now it's quieting down again. But it's a great example to see this mold, because you can imagine the mold on the right-hand side getting a blob of this black carbon fiber SMC material put in it, like Steve referred to it as Play-Doh. Put a blob of Play-Doh in there, and then the mold on the left gets socketed into that, and that squishes the Play-Doh out and makes essentially your carbon fiber SMC part. 8 minutes later, mold pops apart, you're good to go.
Because everything is machined and it's known numerically, the volume inside here, the amount of the precise grams of material needed is known just to fill the volume here, so it's very precise. They measure out the exact amount to the gram, so there's, like I said, there's no waste.
And the big holes you see on the corners, those are actually guides that align the 2 dies as they come together. Ooh.
The door in and out, yeah. Yeah, seeing the doors is pretty cool. And again, you see there's lots of features. You see those little circles and things on the right-hand side. Some of those are where inserts are gonna go. So threaded inserts, things like that. So that's all made in the part. When the part comes out, again, there's very little work that has to happen to it. We're ready to bolt stuff to it, fasten things to it. They're not just regular decorative inserts, they're actually structural, and so the size of them, the method of how they're made, and the shear and tension force that they can withstand are all things calculated by CPC. It's part of their IP, is how do they put those sometimes very high structural hard points into the tool, into the part when they're making it with the tool.
And these are both B-side tools, so that's the back side of the part. And I think I saw a video by Steve at Aptera Owners Club, shout out, that the little texture patterns on there, the little cross hatching, is actually where the adhesive goes,
right.
the bonding agent to stick the 2 parts together. So you have to do less surface treatment on the other side. You basically pop the part out of the mold, and then you can put the glue on and slap the matching part to it.
We say adhesive.
Adhesive, yeah.
This is a favorite one.
Yeah, this was great, and you saw the video of us standing between these 2, so we thought it was amazing that CPC kind of set these up, and you could really envision yourself sitting inside the Aptera, inside these 2 giant 8,000-pound each molds. You can imagine, they were 20,000 pounds when they started. They hogged out, more than half the metal, but these are just amazing to see. I mean, we called it heavy metal porn when we were there, because everything's so shiny and bright, and it's just an amazing feeling to be able to sit inside these 2 massive molds and say, oh, that's the body left, that's the body right. This is the production Aptera tooling.
Yeah, and these are at the final stage of polish, so they're actually ready to go to the next phase, which is they have to put fittings on all of the threaded holes that you see there and install the temperature sensors. There's also some guides on the side, so there's the 4 posts that form the main guide, but there's some guides that you'll see maybe in some of the other pictures that are sort of bolted on the side that help just sort of pre-align the top and bottom as they come in together. You see pockets for them there. So they do all that there, and then they'll commission it with the small press before it actually pulls out a big part. And that happens pretty soon.
Yep. Yeah, in this summer, we'll be seeing the first parts out of these molds. It is worth noting on these molds, you see kind of the body side part on the left and right at the bottom, but there's another part nested into this mold. So this die actually produces 2 parts per press, and you saw that on the doors too. We actually do 2 doors in 1 press. So this gets us kind of the A-pillar covers and the body side, which is really cool to be able to do 2 parts in one go. And it just saves, press time and gets us parts out quicker.
And just so everyone is clear, I mean, with these dies right here, they can operate at least or even higher than our planned capacity, right? 20,000 vehicles a year, 10,000 vehicles per shift. So they are exactly what we need, not only to get through all of the all of the accelerator orders, but to the order backlog as well, and then to keep functioning for years beyond that.
Yeah, these tools are all designed to produce more than 100,000 parts. Some of the tools along the way, they'll need some servicing, they'll need some repolishing. Things kind of happen to the molds over time, but there's no reason that we couldn't, have our first million Aptera on the road in the next decade with these tools that you're seeing right here. And I do think it's worth noting because everyone's seen a lot of other electric vehicle startups and they kind of see their path to production, and we've made amazing progress towards production and now producing production tools, but these are production tools.
Right. They're not soft tools.
These aren't pre-production tools, validation tools. Like these tools that you see here will produce the body sides for your Aptera. There's no other step. There's no other next gate. These tools will be commissioned in the coming months, and they will produce the body sides for the Apteras that you will receive, hopefully very soon.
Now this is the male part of the mold. So every mold again has two parts. The male and the female, or I don't know how they're used and described in tool lingo, but you see that there's a final degree of polishing that's happening right there. And again, you can also see the cross hatching where the adhesive goes, and different alignment features in the mold, and the die. But this is, and you see actually the conjugate part for the, I think this is a windshield frame. I don't know what that other part is on the bottom. That's a side, I think that's a side reinforcement on the bottom. But there's, most of it's done by machine, but in the end, there's still craftspeople that go through and just fine tune everything. And you see the tools and things that they have at their disposal. Very, neatly organized for a small facility, and very efficient with the amount of product that they put out of that facility too.
So this is the inner side of the body side. So this is actually where the part ends up. So the last mold that you saw is what comes down onto this mold you see here, and then when it lifts off, the part is still sitting on this mold that you see here. Those holes, the bigger holes, are actually push pins. So pins actually push up and release the part from the mold. And the little cross hatching that you see, you'll then turn the part over, and that's where the adhesive will go to bond the body side to the tub and other parts of the vehicle.
If you look at the very left, kind of midway on the edge, you see like the same kind of car posters and tool posters that you'd see in the U.S. They also have in Italy. Obviously, they love cars very much there.
Yeah, that region of Italy is quite fascinating with the history of all the supercars that have been built there, and just amazing engineering talent. It's cool to see a lot of guys with great heritage in engineering of some amazing cars that you've seen over the years, but then just go goo goo gaga over Aptera.
They flip their lid over it. Yeah, they love it.
The ultimate in aerodynamic efficiency and solar powered. So we were complimented very well over there, I think. Our solar team has made amazing progress behind us here. Really, we had the first production validation with producing kind of 10 panels a day at our other shop, and now we're kind of streamlining our operations here and investigating really the production materials that will take to production. And since you last saw panels being made, we've actually increased the durability of the panels. There's quite a bit more hardness, so the surface finish is a lot nicer, a lot more luster. It has more scratch resistance now, which is great, and it's less reflective. We're also working with materials groups on some coatings that can have some real impact to our solar production, which we think is really cool.
It's also more manufacturable. We don't have struggle with the air bubbles and other artifacts that you see in the manufacturing process. So those are basically non-existent in the new material. So,
yeah, we had a lot of early production issues and some delamination, and you see the air bubbles over time. And these new panels just they're perfect every time. Every time we see one, I'm just giddy over how cool they look. Sorry.
So yesterday we had an interesting visit to our partner who's helping us design and validate our motor inverter. So the Aptera, the Launch Edition, has 3 motors, and each motor requires its own inverter. And because the vehicle is so efficient, we actually have some options that most manufacturers don't have. So as a recovering electrical engineer, and all you electrical engineers out there, you are likely aware of silicon carbide. It's a very low loss power device that's all the rage today in electric vehicles. there's a couple problems with silicon carbide. The first one is cost. It costs about 10 times greater per watt for automotive grade components than, let's say, IGBTs or regular low RDS(on) MOSFETs. The second thing is availability. Every automotive manufacturer wants them because they're trying to get every bit of efficiency out of their inverters. Why? Well, the current losses are proportional to current squared. Now, when you have only one motor and only one inverter, and you have a 4 or 5 or 6,000 pound electric vehicle, the current is it's bonkers compared to the Aptera. So they need every bit of advantage they can get. What we learned yesterday, seeing our inverter and the motor on the dyno with our, that's actually a prototype Alafe, that's our new design that's on the dyno stand there. What we learned is that we're at a regime where it's not going to make much difference if we actually decide to use a lower cost IGBT as opposed to the silicon carbide that's in here now. So we have that option, and we're looking at that option because we want to do everything we can to make the vehicle cost competitive. We want it to be efficient, and it is going to be very efficient. But if we can take little bits out where maybe the payback is not that great, and then lower the cost of the vehicle, we're certainly going to look at that. So I think that's actually an exciting part of news, is that the vehicle and the requirements are so small that the gains traditionally seen from silicon carbide are just not that big for Aptera. So maybe we can use cheaper devices.
Yeah, in a lot of ways we see that happen, right? Same thing with the DC fast charge. We charge 4 to 5 times quicker than other EVs out there. So we can have components that are a lot smaller, a lot cheaper, and in the end make the Aptera just that much more better. So drivetrain components, we only have 50 kilowatts a wheel, but you look at some other drivetrains for bigger electric vehicles out there, and they're monsters. So,
but if you've seen the CAD that we have of our design intent inverter, this is it. I think the top is not on it, but this is our inverter driving our motor on the dyno. So pretty cool to see.
Very, very cool. Big milestone. And we just got back from Italy, and we were hosted by CPC and got to bring in all our European kind of suppliers there. And we got to show them the vision we have for Aptera and how we're pushing towards production and all the help that CPC is giving us. I think it was great to kind of show them how CPC really enables our path to production. We don't have to figure out how to make these body structures in high volume. We don't have to figure out how to, assemble them and get them well toleranced and, hang the doors. And, there's a lot of issues that I've seen other vehicle startups have getting into production, and we just kind of scrub all those off the table because CPC makes turnkey supercars, some of the most compelling vehicles in the world. And they know how to tolerance doors. They know how to assemble these parts. And they weren't only involved in the design of the parts, but they were, involved in how the tools were made, commissioning those tools, and then they will be responsible for pulling the first parts off of those tools and actually assembling them into a tolerant vehicle. And I think it's just an amazing kind of shortcut or advantage to us to be able to have their capabilities with Aptera and our path to production. So the suppliers that we met there, they're happy because that will enable us to get to production quicker, and they can sell us parts quicker.
And lower risk, honestly. The risk of doing all of that. I mean, we're already doing so much from scratch, right? Motor, inverter, solar, batteries. So to have the assembly of this vehicle done by somebody that knows how to do it to exacting standards. Other interesting thing about this is that inside this very beautiful auditorium that Franco built at CPC, I was supposed to be there with you. Akos and I were supposed to go to Rome that morning to meet with an investor, but of course the day that we decided to go, there was a train derailment, and as we got to the station, all of the leaderboard or whatever you call it for the train, the train board, everything was canceled. So we decided to charge it and just drive. So it was like a 9-hour round trip, but it was worth it. It was a very good trip, productive, certainly one of our most further along investment opportunities there. So we're unable to get back to you that day in time, and we missed the entire event because of that, but I think it was worth it.
Yeah, really cool to be talking to very large investors and people that can support this program, and in Rome and Modena and lots of parts of Italy. I think we'll find some grand support on our path to production. Shout out to Bryce, Matt, and Reed in this picture. Our team that made it over to Italy to talk to suppliers and talk through our path to production. Really cool to see.
Oh, look, they dress up nicely too.
Oh, look at that, they do. Oh, I'm wearing the same shirt,
Yeah.
Apparently we have a uniform.
Yeah, standard uniform.
And this is it. Our ATVM loan application, 214 pages of fun. Dwayne Gibson, a great help in getting this done, but our team too, Blake and the rest of the team, Sarah and Pablo, all contributed to make this application great. And it's been a long time coming. It's been since we started working on it last year. So. The DOE has a lot of information requests, and we have to have kind of a fully flushed application. And there was kind of a lot of things in limbo before we pinned the Delta design. So how we were going to manage the supply chain, how Italy was going to fit into that, how much we were going to do in California versus overseas. And obviously the Department of Energy wants to fund production and technologies here in the U.S. So we really had to have kind of a final plan to get the vehicle to production and all the pieces and parts that entail. And we were able to do that over the last few months and get this application together. And it's a very detailed plan. It's got a lot of numbers and a lot of charts and a lot of great information. And it's off to the Department of Energy, and they are reviewing it now. And the next gates are they kind of do an initial review, and they give us feedback on what it will take to make it a perfect application. And then once we kind of go through the feedback loop with them, then we'll finally get to a point where we can fully submit the application, and then they'll review it and say, okay, you're substantively complete,
right,
substantially complete. And when it's substantially complete, that means that anything that we buy here can actually work against that loan application. So
yeah, there's still some caution. I mean, we have to go through a formal due diligence and that whole approval process, but it'll be a very big milestone when we get that substantially complete.
Well, the cool thing is, I think people ask, okay, it's great that you have this application, but when can you start spending money? When can you start to execute the plan? And ostensibly, it's when it's substantively complete. We can start to execute our plan and actually utilize a lot of that loan. That doesn't mean that it's granted, though. You have to actually get it granted, and that may take several months. But once it's granted, then you're just waiting on the funding for that to happen. So very cool effort by the team, and an awesome milestone. And it alludes to when we can start using that loan as we're using the CEC grant right now, which is great to have kind of the first approvals for equipment that you see on the floor here. And I would love to be independently wealthy and be able to fund it myself, but everything takes money to get this vehicle into production, and all this pretty equipment costs money. And the California Energy Commission has stepped up and is helping, and we are hopeful that the DOE process will go swimmingly. We've still been working a lot of other angles to fund our path to production, and the Accelerator program has gone amazingly. I'm just so humbled to every day kind of log in and see this number go up. People buying their place in line for the first 2,000 slots. I think it was a really cool way to give people access to these early vehicles and also fund a lot of the really amazing things that we need to get to production. But this $14 million that we've raised in the past couple months with this Accelerator program is the reason why we're continuing to progress with CPC. It's the reason why we've kicked off a lot of other vendors,
right.
In the battery system, in the solar production, braking, our VCU controller, interior parts, all those things have been enabled.
So in anticipation of not only the CEC grant, but as we're monitoring the inflow from this, we asked the team to come back with specific chunks of money that they can spend. And so there's a very large spend that was approved last week for virtually all of the different engineering zones to move things to the very next level in terms of design release. So things are happening, all funded by this, and it's incredibly helpful for the goal.
We think that this program will progress, and we're almost halfway there. So it will be really cool to see the second half of this program and how hopefully aggressive it will get to earn those top spots Everybody wants to get the first Aptera off the line, and certainly the first 2,000 will be extremely valuable for a lifetime. But we're waiting for Gamma to come back. You saw in that picture in Italy, we have Gamma over there. It's going to stay for an event in Modena on the 10th through like the 14th, but then it's coming back to the U.S. It's gone on its world tour.
Can we talk about that event at all?
Yeah.
The Motor Valley Fest, I think it's called.
Oh yeah, the Motor Valley Fest. It's if you're in Modena, Italy, and you want to see Gamma, it will be there. It's a great event for that region, and you know all of our European suppliers are mostly in that region, so it will be great for Gamma to be seen by a lot of those people, and be alongside some really cool supercar brands that you know and probably love.
And lots of good food.
And lots of good cured meats and Lambrusco. But when we get it back to California, Sarah and her great team will have some amazing events for you to come and see and experience Gamma, and hopefully get more people into the Accelerator program. So most of those events will probably happen in Southern California. Hopefully a couple events here at the facility, so you can come and see all the amazing progress we've made here. And meet some of the Aptera people. But that's the plan, is to get Gamma back here, and then start to have some events so people can see, the near production Gamma. There are a lot of things that have happened to Gamma, but when you look at Gamma, it ostensibly looks like a production vehicle. So, the ergonomics and being able to sit in it, I think it was really cool, and a compliment that we took it to fully charged. And we had over 2,000 people sit in the vehicle. There was a line of 2.5 hours. People waited at that show just to sit in the Aptera for 5 seconds, and we got overwhelmingly positive feedback. So, having Gamma back will be a big treat for us internally, and hopefully for anyone that can make it to come see Gamma. And we're still continuing conversations outside of the Accelerator program with big investors around the world.
Yeah, we've got institutional investors that we've met with in Europe and in the GCC, and that we're going back to again later this month. And so those have been happening in addition to the crowdfunding, in addition to the Accelerator, because that's the level of capital that we're looking at, institutional investors. And the good news is there's lots of interest in Europe and in the GCC in this space. So we're very happy with the progress that we're making.
Yeah, big institutional investors and sovereign investors in parts of Asia, the GCC and Europe. All those people are investing in technology. Unfortunately, the markets have been rather tumultuous in North America, and we were pushing to raise a lot of this funding last year, but the capital markets were pretty much frozen, into the summer and obviously through the end of the year, and now even even as we speak, you look at some of the news, and it's fear mongering, and
right.
a lot of
doom
peddling.
porn.
Doom porn on the internet is a real thing, and you can bury yourself in negative videos. But we continue to raise money. People continue to find Aptera's story, and they support the mission of solar mobility with their dollars, with their reservations for the vehicles, with investment. And it's amazing to see that our story continues, even with these tumultuous times, to be a great one. I mean, $14 million in the last couple months. When you look at the market, and some pretty interesting and negative times in terms of news, but I think we're a very positive story. We continue to push to production, and the things that this vehicle will do for the world are compelling. Solar mobility is compelling. It's a mission worth fighting for, and we're so happy that everyone has joined in that mission, making the world a more efficient place, making the world a better place in general. We have a great preview here of the Aptera off-road package. This is just some styling by Jason Hill, but to think of the Aptera in a setting like this, to be able to get out in nature and have a vehicle produce its own fuel when you're out adventuring is just a whole new concept in the world, and I think something that's really cool.
Absolutely.
We would like to open it up to questions now, unless I missed any big topics. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions, so should they write them in the chat? Is that?
Yeah, these are the ones you.
Okay, these are
from the thing.
Accelerators and investors.
We already submitted questions, so hopefully they're questions that that you guys are asking as well. But you just want to. Oh,
Will Aptera support CarPlay?
we're working on it right now. Android Auto and Aptera Carplay, we're evaluating them for use in our current hardware package, and those things are kind of being flushed out as we speak.
Our engineers are at least talking with Apple, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Very good.
It takes some of the burden off of our UI, UX development to use these kind of systems, because if you don't, then you have to develop your own navigation package, your own kind of music package. So in a lot of ways, these can kind of help speed our development. We've really focused on the usability of the user interface to tell how the vehicle uses energy and tell how the vehicle creates energy, and give you a lot of useful tools for that. But the other rote stuff like navigation, and music and stuff like that.
Why reinvent that?
Yeah, we Apple and Android do it very well, so we do see it as hopefully a shortcut.
Will Aptera have tamper sensors and cameras for security / theft?
We are actively talking about how to use the camera for security system, kind of a Sentry mode system, but it's very low on our priority list, so it's not something that we're devoting a lot of time to. We don't have a lot of other sensors in the vehicle, like brake sensors and stuff, but there are accelerometers where we could tell if somebody was getting in the vehicle, after it's meant to be locked.
I think the hardware hooks are there. I think it's just a matter of right mouse click, add software module.
Tell the engineers that. No.
Make their head explode.
Will the charging software allow us to limit charging to 80%? Yes, but the really cool thing about the Aptera is most other electric vehicles, we've seen this in other industries, especially kind of the commercial industry, you have to charge them, or you brick the batteries. If you don't, you get the vehicle to a charger. But with Aptera, its solar charger is always trickle charging the battery, so hopefully your solar is always keeping your battery topped up, and it'll have a great long and useful life. Yeah,
that's right.
Will Aptera provide information, parts, tools necessary for owners to replace faulty cells in the battery pack? We do have a system to give you lots of information on how the battery is performing over time, its state of health, how well balanced it is, but the battery pack will not be a serviceable item.
Yeah, I don't know any EV out there where the battery pack is serviceable. I mean, it's a great goal, and we should work towards that goal, but at the moment we're not deviating too far from the mainstream norm on that. I think the battery pack is pretty much a seal it and forget it unit.
Yeah, it used to be that the early EVs, you could replace cells over time, but the reason you needed to replace cells over time was because the consistency of the cells wasn't that great, and the quality for longevity wasn't that great. But battery cells have changed a lot in the last few years, and the consistency and internal impedance and capacity is just so much better now. Everybody's gone to basically pot the whole pack, and basically it's a brick. So you can't get in there to replace the cells. But
that's right.
It's good for thermal as well. I live in Colorado, which seems perfect for my Aptera, but the sun is extremely damaging, and I've seen what the sun can do to car wraps in just a few years. Granted, these examples are, our vehicles will be wrapped from the factory. We're doing testing right now to assure that those wraps can last you a very long time and have a useful life. We've seen examples of other cars that come from the factory with wraps, so they're getting more and more popular. But we expect, our wraps to be not only versatile because you can change them out very inexpensively, but something that will, serve you for a good amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, I think at least 5 years is the kind of standard today, and I think we aim to do better than that.
Yeah, my boat company, we wrap lots of boats, a little different because they're sitting on a trailer and go in water all the time. But really what happens to wraps is the edges get dirty and then the edges start to peel up. So even in drastic circumstances, if the wrap starts to peel up, you can kind of maintain those wraps. You can, clean the edges and press, down where the edges are peeling and get them to last, twice as long. But the wraps nowadays are very, very cool. Self-healing. If you scratch them, you can go in, with a hair dryer, heat gun, or just wait for the sun to come out, and they basically repair themselves. So we think that the wraps add a huge advantage, and we don't have to have a paint shop. We're not atomizing solvents. It's much better for the environment.
Always edge effects, isn't it? That's electrical engineering humor. Okay, how will the inevitable devaluation of the U.S. dollar affect Aptera's procurement? Okay, the dollar is not inevitably going to be devalued. There's a lot of financial doom porn going out there about de-dollarization. But that's just what gets clicks in the news. I've lived and we've done business all around the world, lived in different countries, and there's fundamental things in the American economy that encourage people to continue to want to invest in the American economy and use dollars. The equal application of the rule of law, property protection rights, we take those things for granted here, but in many countries, they're non-existent. And so there's always going to be a place for dollars. Don't believe all of that stuff. It does get clicks, and there's big macro things happening, but the dollar's not going away or being devalued, I think, anytime soon.
If the Aptera is meant to be left outside to take full advantage of solar charging, how do you imagine it will hold up in a sudden afternoon hailstorm? I don't know if you've seen videos of our solar, but we actually have a hail simulator and an ice gun behind us. It shoots high velocity ice balls at the panels to test how the cells hold up over time. It is a standard test for household solar, the solar you have on your roof, ice balls coming down at speed in a hailstorm. And we've already tested for that and feel the Aptera will hold up very, very well.
Apparently there's a standardized test with like a 1-inch ice cube or ice ball and a specific velocity it has to be launched at through. So it does very well, and all of our panels have been tested against that.
Tesla superchargers. Since Aptera decided to use the Tesla plug, does this mean we can use any supercharger available? Not any supercharger available, but as of now, Tesla is opening up its network. We can use our app and go charge our other EVs now at the Tesla network, and they're opening up more and more ports over time. We hope that by the time we're into production, we'll have access to a lot of that network, and it will, hopefully expand over time. We fought hard to get the Tesla plug in our vehicle because it was the smallest form factor, and we thought it was just the best engineering. We had 42,000 people sign a petition to make that happen, so thank you. And Tesla did open up that standard and now has opened up the supercharger network. So when you want to take a trip with your Aptera, if you want to supercharge 5 times faster than the Tesla next to you, the Aptera is a great way to do it.
Unnecessary flex. Let's see. How are you dealing with road noise and sound from outside the car? Has this improved over your iterations? Yes. So a lot of the video that we have, in fact, virtually all the video we have are from alphas and a little bit of gamma. And the thing you have to remember about the alphas is those were made open mold. They weren't two-sided tools. The first one even was put together by Chris and myself, so it didn't go together as good as some of the later ones. And there's lots of gaps in the doors and the seals, and some of them the seals don't even shut flush, and so you hear road noise and air and things like that coming in. Gamma is a step function improvement over that, but even that was made with an open molded tool. So the new bodies from CPC, the doors will align perfectly, the seals will shut perfectly, as shown in simulation and as evidenced in the kind of vehicles that they build already. So we think it's going to be a step function reduction in noise.
And CPC is making, $1 million supercars meant to go, close to 300 miles an hour. So, they know fit and flush and how to seal those cars up. And, when people are paying that much money for a supercar, they expect it to be high quality, and we get the advantages of that, of having it.
They're also doing higher volume stuff that they can't talk about too, but they do have experience in the high volume as well, which is why it's helpful for us.
Does Aptera have plans for other mobility solutions? Yeah, Jason Hill has ideated a bunch of amazing things that take advantage of aerodynamics, lightweight, super efficient powertrain, and solar power that could branch us out into almost any sector of transportation. But we want to go where we'll have the most impact to start, and we feel that the 3-wheeled version of the Aptera will have the most impact on efficiency overall, and we want to concentrate on that and get that into production and build many variants of that, as we can into the future. Delivery. Bell,
our product portfolio, uses our design language of solar, lightweight, aerodynamics, and like you said, Jason, we've got pretty much every kind of vehicle you can imagine: van, sedan, station wagon, delivery van, or larger, all designed with Aptera ethos. So it's going to be lower cost to operate per mile, more sustainable, and maybe some of them don't need to be plugged in at all, just like the current Aptera.
Will the steering yoke have variable steering influence at different speeds?
Yes, the rate of boost is is adjusted by the computer and is proportional to speed. So you get maximum boost in the parking lot when you're going slow, and I think virtually zero boost at high speed.
Is the Aptera 500-pound weight limit because of structural concerns, suspension, or efficiency? How much are you going to limit the weight? We haven't done a lot of testing on this because we need to have the kind of the final validation version of the vehicle, but we've stated kind of 500-pound cargo and passenger capacity. That means two 150-pound passengers and 200 pounds of cargo in the back. You know, the Aptera is very weight sensitive because it's a very lightweight vehicle, a 2,200-pound vehicle. If you add another, 800 pounds to it, it becomes a much different kind of vehicle in terms of, suspension dynamics and drivetrain power and all that stuff. So the Aptera is more weight sensitive than other vehicles, and that's just a fact of being the most efficient vehicle out there. Every 30 pounds of weight you add to the Aptera, you can lose 1% of range. So we will probably limit the weight capacity of the Aptera more than other vehicles would, because when you weigh 6,000 pounds, you don't really care about how much extra cargo you have. So that's just kind of a fact of us being a very, very efficient vehicle. But we'll give you more guidance on that as we get to validating these vehicles, as we get closer to production, and the numbers may change on that.
Last one, how has supply chain or inflation affected the Aptera price, or will it?
Yeah, the supply chain was a bit of a nightmare last year for sure. Since we announced pricing in March of 2019, I mean, just inflation on most of the components that we have gone up 30%. So, those things will be sorted out as we get closer to production and we sign master supply agreements with a lot of these suppliers. The big things that have been really variable is the cost of the battery cells. Last year, a lot of the manufacturers are seeing huge spikes in aluminum, copper, and a lot of the materials that make the battery. So, and the battery is the most expensive thing in our bill of materials. So, we want to sign a master supply agreement with someone that feels comfortable with long-term pricing, and we feel that the picture of that has just totally changed in the last, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot different conversation last year, and now we're having much more positive conversations with much more, vendors about future pricing. So we do think there are certainly impacts, and we'll advise on pricing, warranty, and all that as we get closer to production. But we think that will take a while longer to sort out.
Right, like we had 2 vendors actually in Europe who have revised their pricing upwards because of the energy costs, right? Mm-hmm. Now that they're not getting gas from Russia, so their power plants get gas from other places, it's more expensive, so electricity's gone up, in some cases a factor of 3. Now, will that be the case when we start delivering vehicles? Maybe not, but at the moment it is, and so we'll have to look at the pricing and how that's reflective of it.
Yeah, you end up with some manufacturing master supply agreements with suppliers that have some flexibility for that, and we see that as just kind of the future of the industry. So, Fundraising Accelerator, is there a tiered funding plan, or do you have to hold off on Aptera?
We don't have
we're basically working on a multi-pronged approach to funding, which is equipment financing, which is debt, which is equity financing, not just from the crowdfunding, but from other larger investors, big funds, institutionals, grants, and big loan programs like the DOE loan program. We think all of those together will be key pieces in getting this vehicle into production. I would love to have an inspired billionaire walk through the door and hand us a very large check, and we can just execute it on everything, all at once. But we don't need to spend all of our money at once.
Right. It's about, I think, most of the capital is spent over a 6-7 month window.
It's like 9 months where we spend, most of the capital that we need for production. And yes, if we're able to raise $50 million tomorrow, that takes care of a big chunk of the early spend. So when this accelerator program started and we started bringing in funds from the accelerator program, we started immediately deploying that, and that's a good chunk of what we need to get to production. And hopefully we'll double the amount that we've raised with that accelerator program or more, as people get excited about earning the top spots over the next few months. And if that becomes a $30 million chunk, then great. That's amazing progress. And will be added into the other pieces, debt financing and grants and loans, and all that will come together for the production equipment and tooling that we need in the factory here.
Why are accelerators given delivery priority over those who invested prior to the accelerator program?
We see the value of those first 2,000 production slots is just something that people, you know, it has real value to get one of the first 2,000 Apteras. They'll be the first solar mobility on the road. You know, and you know, you look at other kind of limited edition vehicles, the Tesla Roadster and others. You know, they've had, you know, great value as those companies have grown. So, you know, it was a mechanism to get more funding to accelerate our path to production, and it was kind of a gift to people that can jump in and support us in that way. Also a gift to our larger investors, because if you invest $10,000 in the accelerator program, we add your previous investment too. So for those previous people that have invested, you know, considerable money into Aptera, it was a way to kind of get them into the first 2,000 production slots by allowing them to use their previous investment in that. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach where we thought it was kind of rewarding previous investment, but also energizing more capital into the equation.
That's good. Maybe one more.
One more. Let's see, East Coast, 26. Okay, there are 26 European accelerators, mainly German, Netherlands, and EU and Switzerland. Will Aptera assist those accelerators to ship those Aptera together in Europe? We are homologating in Switzerland first. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we've engaged a local company there. We're working with them to try and establish a beachhead, although Switzerland doesn't really have any beaches, so that's maybe a bad analogy, but we're establish a presence there first, again, for a variety of reasons, and then from there begin homologation through the EU.
I think most of the remaining questions were production start timing. Really, when will we be able to start production? You know, if we find a large investor soon, it takes about 9 months to stand up the rest of the assembly line, as Pablo would say, and have vehicles flowing. So that's what we're looking at in terms of timing. A lot of the long lead timing could really catch us up. The body tooling, especially from CPC, you know, could take more than a year to produce those molds and commission them and get them into production. But we started that last year, so that won't be a holdup. But you know, really, the next gates are you know, finishing the ED&T and validation with a lot of suppliers for those parts. And as we finish that, we'll be able to kind of kick off those parts, you know, get the supply agreement signed and have delivery dates for those parts. But I would say, you know, if everything goes well and we secure funding quickly, it's about 9 months from when we secure funding to stand up the assembly line, and then, you know, obviously you have to turn the machine on and validate those lines and then really get in production. So, you know, we're pushing the timeline because we you know, have funding needs to get all this done, and we understand that everybody out there wants their Aptera as quick as possible. And you know, we've been humbled by your support and continued understanding that these things take time, and we haven't been blessed by that inspired billionaire yet. But we're working hard to improve the vehicle, you know, as we have kind of more time to do so. And we feel really excited about a lot of the investment possibilities that we've been talking to. I think certainly last year we were frustrated, you know, that it wasn't happening, that we weren't talking to the right groups. But I think, you know, kind of re-engaging, you know, or changing up the investment process last year has really got us inspired that there's a lot of people out there that want to support solar mobility and our path to production. They're excited that we have $1.5 billion in orders already. They're excited that we have, you know, a great intellectual property suite that, you know, innovates in solar and battery pack and body structures and, you know, all the cool things we're doing. And at the end of the day, puts a vehicle on the road that is so compelling in terms of efficiency, in terms of, you know, grid independence, in terms of how it will really shape the world that we'll see in the future. So I think it's exciting that, you know, the conversations that you and I are having are really getting traction, and I think you know, all those will enable us to ramp to production more quickly, including your support out there, joining the Accelerator program, telling our story. But it's really our community that has helped us get to where we are, and we're just so thankful that everyone's out there to help. But the number one way you can help is just tell our story. So I'm sure we have lots of people on this call that have many friends that just haven't heard of Aptera. I mean, we're in kind of a little bubble here where I think about Aptera all the time. So we assume that that people know. But every time we put out a new video on a different YouTube channel, we get a whole new audience. We're just surprised, like nobody knew us in that channel. Nobody
How they
knew
not
us
know
in that
about
vertical.
us?
How did they not know us about us? You know, everybody's got to know about solar mobility, right? No. I would be surprised if more than 1% of Americans, you know, had even heard the name Aptera. So there's a lot of people that just have no idea that solar mobility can be a thing. So if you can tell our story, tell a friend, tell them to go to the website, send them a video link. You know, Chris McCammon and Sarah's team, they're just producing really awesome videos and great content. So if you can inspire somebody to just listen to our story, they may share with another friend, and that may not lead to an investment or a reservation, but you know, just getting our story out there will influence this business model. And so please share all you can.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.